Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. This is Lori Smith on Blog Talk Radio. It is 10 o'clock p.m. here in Calgary, Alberta, Friday night, October the 28th. I'm glad to be here. This is Child Abuse Prevention is Up to Us, and we're on for 30 minutes. It's a live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com. And the chat room is open. I did pop the link into there to what we're looking at Monday night. And that was from helpguide.org. That's a great website. And they're a not-for-profit organization. They have tons of great information on their website about everything. Just about any issue or anything health-wise or, any kind of topic, abuse or, addiction or crisis, just anything. I mean, there's just all kinds of stuff on there, so I hope everybody will check that out. Help Guide is awesome. So I just want to kind of continue looking at that article. I've actually looked at it many times, and I've been through the website just combing it for information because there is some really great information there. And this is from www.helpguide.org, and the name of the article, the name of the section actually, it's under abuse, and it's called Child Abuse and Neglect, Recognizing and Preventing Child Abuse. And this is a great resource for people. There's links, there's all kinds of links to different websites and different information. There's the Child Help National Child Abuse Hotline number there, 1-800-4-CHILD. There's Kids Line, and just Australia, UK, New Zealand, like everywhere. It's really a good website, and I like it. We were looking at the issues, regarding child abuse and neglect, and recognizing and preventing child abuse. Right? There's we just started looking at it Monday, but I've already been through this many times, but I thought I'd go over some more of it. This is really good info for people who may not have heard a whole lot about child abuse. Like I do a whole lot of talking about child abuse. Most people that listen to my shows are pretty much just regular listeners, which I appreciate everybody's tuning in. And other people, there might be somebody new listening. Like I do cover child abuse prevention stuff, usually in the evenings. In the mornings I do my own healing journey, one child abuse survivor to another. And then on the weekends sometimes I throw in some shows, and on Sunday I have a Bible show that I really love to do. And I just figured while I'm paying for Blog Talk Radio, it's costing me money, I may as well do as many shows as I possibly can. And so I've been doing shows since November 2009, so coming up on 2 years. So I had no idea how long I'd be doing these shows or how long I'd be able to afford to do them, actually, and I really can't afford to do them, but I keep doing them anyway. And so, I appreciate everybody who's taking the time to listen to what I have to say because, I spend a lot of time on here, and I know that it's hard to keep up with all my shows. There's so many shows I'd like to listen to on Blog Talk Radio as well that I don't have time to do, don't have time to catch them all. And there's just so much good information, that people can get, so be sure and check it all out. And so this is what I do, and I'm mainly a child abuse prevention public speaker, and speaking about all issues regarding child abuse and, whether it's child abuse prevention, child abuse itself, adult survivor issues. I mean, I'm just talking about it all. So you have to listen to all of my shows at your own discretion. You have to know what's good for you to listen to. If you think topics of abuse might bother you, you have to turn the show off. Like, it's your discretion. And young people under the age of 18, I just ask that you have permission to listen to the show from an adult. Like, have an adult listen to the show with you, and then they can make sure that it's age appropriate for you, because none of my shows are for younger children. And really, for anyone under the age of 18, I just ask that you have permission to listen to my shows. They're not for children at all, and there's a lot of adult content on my shows. And I just don't know how young the people are who are listening to my shows. So do the right thing and keep yourself safe when you're online. Right? You can type into your browser internet safety, online safety for children, things like this, and that'll take you to websites that'll really give you some good tips and pointers on how to keep yourself safe online. And especially if you're a young person, and you're online, you need to keep yourself safe, right? The FBI has a great website, FBI.gov, and I love that website. And they have really good information on there about protection of children online, right? It's so important that you, if you're a young person listening to this, learn how to keep yourself safe, because there are a lot of people out there, a lot of very sick people who are trying to get a hold of children online. And you need to know how to keep yourself safe when you're in these live, chat rooms and whatnot, different places, gaming websites and whatnot. So get the information and keep yourself safe, right? So we'll get right into this, and we're just looking at child abuse and neglect. What is it? There's myths and facts about child abuse and neglect on this website. There's myth number one. It's only abuse if it's violent. And they said that the fact is that physical abuse is just one type of child abuse. Neglect and emotional abuse can be just as damaging And since they are more subtle, others are less likely to intervene. Well, that's so true. Emotional abuse, for instance, psychological abuse, is very hard to prove in court unless you have it documented, witnesses, because there's no marks, there's no scars, there's no physical signs of emotional abuse unless a child is, becomes very physically sick because of the emotional or psychological abuse, which can manifest in the body, obviously. But otherwise, there'd have to be some sort of a witness or some sort of, documentation, that verbal abuse, emotional abuse, psychological abuse is taking place. Otherwise, how do you prove it, right? So some of the stuff is very hard to prove in court, and it has to be documented. Like if you know of a child who's being abused verbally, emotionally, psychologically, even though there's no physical abuse, people ask me, well, what do you think is the worst type of abuse, And I've answered that question many times before, and I just say it's all bad. It all hurts incredibly bad. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter whether, to me, I was physically abused, I was sexually abused, I was emotionally, psychologically abused, so verbally assaulted. Like people say, what's the worst? I think it's all extremely bad. I don't want to sit there and say one was worse than the other. The culmination of it all was horrific, and no child should ever have to go through that, being verbally abused or emotionally abused. Like, verbally abusing someone is emotional abuse, causing that child pain and to feel, bad about themselves, or to feel that they're no good, or to feel that they're stupid, or whatever the abuser is telling the child. It doesn't have to be physical to be abuse, right? So this is very important for people to realize. Myth number 2, only bad people abuse their children. And they said here, fact, while it's easy to say that only bad people abuse their children, it's not always so black and white. Not all abusers are intentionally harming their children. Many have been victims of abuse themselves and don't know any other way to parent. Others may be struggling with mental illness or mental health issues and or substance abuse problem, they said. And that's true. And it's all, if it's abuse, it's abuse. And it really, to me, it really makes no difference, what the circumstances are around it. My parents were both abused as children, and they went on to abuse their children, which is us. And, does that excuse it? Does that give them an excuse for doing what they did? Absolutely not. People need to be accountable for what they do, and, abuse is abuse. So if you're guilty, you're guilty. And it's like, it really makes no difference to me whether someone was abused as a child or not and then goes on to abuse. It's like, well, they had a choice. A child abuse is a choice. Abuse is a choice, period. Because we make these decisions. People make these decisions to do these hurtful things to their families, children, other people's children, whatever, whoever they're abusing, right? We all have the choice not to do that. Every single person on this planet. There's nobody I've heard of cases where there were situations where people have been forced to abuse somebody or a child by gunpoint or whatever. In that circumstance, I guess, trying to save their own life, they did what they had to do. But the thing is that's rare. People generally, berate their children, belittle their children, hurt their husbands and wives, whoever, their girlfriends, boyfriends, or partners. Free will choice. Right? It's like they choose to do these things. And then, there's always quite often the honeymoon stage. Oh, I'm sorry, I won't do it again, whoever the abuser is. It's all a form of control, manipulation and control, and trying to stay in control. It's not about losing control, which I study abuse, so I already, that's what I study this stuff, so I know what it is and what it's all about. And, some people say, well, a person was mentally ill, that's why they abused their child or whatever. Well, my dad was mentally ill and he abused us. Did that give him an excuse? No. My mother also had mental emotional problems, and did it give her an excuse? No. Right? None of that stuff is an excuse, right? But people say, do only bad people abuse children? To me, it's not, my parents had friends. They had friends outside the family, people would say, if somebody knew my parents and obviously didn't know what they had done to each other and what they had done to their children, they'd be like, oh, we just love them guys. My parents had friends outside of the family that loved them, that cared about them. They didn't care about the kids, and they knew what kind of situation we were growing up in. They knew that the situation was not good. They knew that social workers were called in. They knew that my parents fought all the time, and the police were always at the house, and that social workers were around. And yet they still liked my parents, because my parents were good to their friends. See, Like abusers are quite often good to their friends, but it doesn't mean that they're going to be good to the people they're abusing. That's the problem. So does it make them a bad person? I mean, do only bad people abuse? I mean, to me, if you ask me, yeah, absolutely. Because you have to be pretty sick and twisted to abuse anybody in the first place. You know, who gives people the right to do that sort of stuff and think that they can get away with it? Well, thank God it's against the law, right? And child abuse is against the law. It's a crime. It's punishable by the law, and it's not okay. It's not okay at all. And so I would say that anybody abuses a child, they're bad. Whether it's another child or whether it's an adult or whoever it is, whether it's a parent, caregiver, somebody else gets a hold of a child, some stranger, abduction or something, they're all bad people to me. Because how can you justify hurting a child in the first place? Even if it's not physical abuse or child sexual abuse, verbally assaulting your children, making them feel bad, that's bad parenting is what that is. And it's bad choice in parenting styles. There's better ways to do it. And people need to wake up and smell the coffee. People need to be accountable for what they do and need to have some type of respect and some type of care for their children enough to say, I got to learn a different way to handle things. There's lots of parents out there who are struggling and having a hard time. It's the hardest job on the planet as far as I know of. I didn't have any children because I lost my baby halfway through, and that was due to the sexual abuse that I suffered as a child. But the issue is that I'd like to think that I would have done a good job because I would have got the information. I would have been like, I have to learn how to do this right. Because so many people out there just don't care. They just don't care how they treat their children, and they're hurting a life. They're hurting someone's life. And the fact of the matter is these abusers really don't care. That's the problem. My parents didn't care what they did to us, and even the courts, they were like, well, you all have to get counseling. If the children are going to remain in the home, then you all are going to court-mandated counseling. You're going to go to family counseling, marital counseling, one-on-one counseling. You're all mentally ill. You all need help. And, they allowed us to stay in the home. And did my parents go to counseling? Twice. That was it. This was back in the 60s when they weren't regulating this stuff, right? So nothing was done. We were left in the home, and, that's the rest of the story is what I've been talking about here. But it's absolutely ridiculous, you know what I mean, that people think that that's okay to do to their children, and it's not. It's not at all, and that's why I'm just one more voice out here saying no, it's really not. And we all need to take a different look at the way we treat children. We need to think differently about children. Children are little people, and they have rights. They have the right to life. They have the right to an abuse-free life, They have the right to protection, provision, everything that they can, that they need. They have the right to get their needs met, right? It's really sad that pathetically around the world children are suffering, and dying, at crazy rates, But I'm just talking about North America, even with what we have going on here, which is great. I mean, North America is awesome. But the thing is look at all the problems we're having. Look at how people treat their children, worse than dogs. They probably treat their family pet better than they do their children. And that's just people who are who really are out of control. And the only way that they can feel that they can keep control is to abuse. But these people are definitely not in control of their lives, or they wouldn't be doing that. And it's unfortunate because there's a lot of circumstances that cause people to do this stuff. Like they said, even drug addiction, alcoholism, drug addiction, whatnot, substance abuse and stuff. That can cause a lot of problems in families. We already know that. My voice is going. Sorry about that. It's been a long day. Actually, it's been a long week. But, is that an excuse, right? Oh, it's like, well, somebody has a drug addiction, but it's okay that they abuse their child or sexually use their child. No. There's none of this stuff as an excuse. But yet people use it. Oh, well, I was abused as a child. That's why I did what I did. It's like, no, that's not an excuse. I don't care. It's not an excuse. There's no excuse for abuse as far as I'm concerned. Absolutely none. And we need to take that factor out, that excuse factor, because there's a lot of people making a lot of excuses for doing what they do to children, raping children, burning, beating, killing their children. It's like, oh, well, I was mentally ill at the time. It's like, I don't care. Too bad. That's why they won't let me be a judge, because our prisons would be full, right? And they don't want that. Yeah, honestly, really, this is the problem. People need to straighten up and quit thinking that it's okay to do these things to children, right? Just take a look at the headlines. I love the headlines, and the reason why I do, is because the world would like to shut this out. The world would like to just silence abuse, information, right? It's like, oh, well, we don't want to see that. We don't want to know that. You know what? That poor kid that was beaten and killed or raped and killed or raped and is in the hospital or killed and beaten and burned or whatever certainly didn't want to have to go through that and deserves to have their story told, front page news, just so that everybody knows what their demonic and evil and sick and twisted abuser did to them, you know. And really, honestly, this is my opinion. As far as that goes, abuse, people who get caught and busted and are found guilty, 100% beyond a shadow of a doubt, 100% guilty of abusing a child in any way. I don't care what it is, whether it's any type of abuse or neglect. I don't care what it is. Should have to do a lifetime of community service where they have to go around and they have to go and speak at huge conventions and tell people what they did to their child or another person's child. And they should have to do that for life. That's what I think. That's punishment. Have to go up there and stand up there and tell, a room full of people, throughout your whole life what you did to your child. That's what I think that they should have to do. Because you know how many people would be circulating around saying, oh, well, I raped my daughter, I raped my son, I beat my child with this, and I killed my child, and and then watch the crowd. You know what I mean? Because see, it's too faceless. Like we don't get enough of a view. You know what I mean? Like of the reality of this. But I survived it. I know what it's like. You know what I mean? And so I know what these poor kids are going through, right? I know that society says, oh, well, that's okay. Just get over it, right? And then to the abusers, well, you just made a mistake. Right. Okay. Like as if we could say that raping a child was a mistake. It's evil and twisted, and it's got to stop. And I'm just one more person out here who's willing to stand up and talk about this stuff and tell the truth about it just like it is, because this is horrific. Kids are going to die tonight. And the ones that don't die, they're going to end up in the hospital. That is only if someone gets them some help and gets them to a hospital. And then there's a whole bunch that will just lie around in their bedrooms or wherever they are in the house or wherever they are, suffering from the abuse injuries that they sustain, and that's every single night. So every time you go to bed, think about that. Every night rolls around, I don't go to sleep without thinking about that. And every morning when I wake up, I don't wake up without thinking about that. The reason why is because I was abused day and night. So it's real easy for me, But I know that these kids out here, I know that they're, this is reality. And it shouldn't be their reality. Like, this has got to stop. And we need whole community participation. Like, that one or two advocates here and there can't do it. You know what I mean? Like, you rarely see anybody just getting involved and saying, you know what, we have to have community participation on this. And you know why? Because nobody wants to hear it. People know what I do. I mean, I always tell everybody what I do when I meet them and talk to them and stuff. Most people are totally uninterested. Even though some of them I've talked to said, well, I was abused as a child. They'll admit to being abused, but yet who's going to talk about the kids that they know are being abused right now? And they're not going to do anything to get them any help, right? And so nobody wants to face this stuff, see, because 1 in 3 girls and 1 in pretty well 4 to 5 boys right now, they're saying, statistically, are being sexually abused right now. Under the age of 18, 1 in 3 to 4 girls, 1 in 6 boys. That's roughly what it is, but they're even saying maybe like 1 in 4 boys, right? So it's about the same. 1 in 3 to 4 girls, 1 in 4 boys will be sexually abused under the age of 18. So, and this is a fact. This is reality based on numbers. You know what I mean? And this is absolutely unacceptable. And yet, what? People are just in so much denial about it. It's like they just want to pretend it doesn't exist. Well, I can't pretend that it doesn't exist because I was raped and sodomized by my brother. He was 21, I was 8 years old. And, I can't forget about that, And my body won't let me forget about that, And the damage it did to my mind and my heart and everything else won't let me forget about that. And the abuse that my parents inflicted upon me, you know what I mean? That alone, let alone that, without the child sexual abuse, was bad enough, right? And so these little kids out here, man, they certainly deserve so much better. And people say, well, it's their own caregiver's fault or their own parents' fault. They should be doing the job. You're right. They should be, but they're not. So who's going to force them? Can't even get social services to do properly working, like we can't even get the systems that we have going right now, fixed. That's the problem. It's not working, right? And so kids are dying. Kids are suffering, and yet we have a whole world full of people just, it's like, oh, what do you want for lunch? It's like, I was doing the same thing, except for it wasn't really, but I wasn't advocating. I wasn't speaking publicly about child abuse until about 2 years ago. But I got off the couch and started volunteering for stuff about 4.5 years ago. And so I before that, I was doing the same thing. I was a survivor. I was just trying to make it, trying not to kill myself, And about, about almost 5 years now, 5 years ago, I decided not to kill myself, and I thought, I'm going to get busy and I'm going to make some noise. I'm going to start talking about this. I'm going to write about it. I'm going to do whatever I can, and not for me, but for these little kids out here, And 5 years later, look how many more we've lost. You know what I mean? And I'm just one advocate amongst many thousands, if not tens of thousands, right? And yet, where's the noise level? We can only get so much noise out because we can't be on the mainstream, public media, which we need to be on. The televisions, the radio stations, we need people to listen to this. But you know what? It's all about ratings. And they know that if they put a child abuse prevention advocate on there who's speaking about child abuse, the people will just turn it off. They'll turn it to another channel that's not talking about child abuse because no one wants to hear about it. And yet tonight, how many kids are going to be lying in their bedrooms brutally raped and beaten and tortured, or burned and stabbed and thrown downstairs and starved? And how many kids are just going to be neglected and just not even looked after? And how many kids are going to lie there and just, just hate themselves because their parents hate them or one of their parents does? This makes me so angry, you know what I mean? Because the rest of the world just looks on, and that's the case. That's what it's always been. I used to go to school with bruises on my face. My mother used to beat the shit out of me and literally rearrange my face. My face has never been the same since one beating that I took from her that changed the shape of my face. And, actually two or three pretty harsh beatings actually that she ruined my face. And the thing is that I went to school. And was anything done? No. Of course, I didn't go to the counselor for help. You know what I mean? I was told I'd be killed if I ever told anybody what my mother was doing to me. I said, well, Mom, what am I going to tell the teacher about this? She was like, just tell her I hit you. I don't care. What are they going to do? They didn't take you away before. They're not going to take you away now, and I have the right to kill you. I can kill you if I want to. But that's how my mother used to talk to me, so there you go. And, it was just like, well, okay, nobody really cares, do they? No, they really don't. So, tragically enough, this is the case even today. Kids are slipping through the cracks, People don't want to talk. Nobody wants to, well, I don't want to tell on the parents because then I won't be able to, going to cook the steaks next summer at the barbecue if they're in prison for abusing their children. It's like, it really is because people don't have a relationship with the kids. They have a relationship with the abusers, the adults, right? Whoever they may be, whether it's grandma and grandpa, aunt and uncle, cousin, brother, sister, somebody, right? Or distant relative or some other person, friend of the family, or maybe it's a babysitter, daycare worker. Could be a teacher even, right? Coach, mentor, you name it, right? Whoever has access to a child, one-on-one especially. And, it's absolutely horrific, right? This has absolutely got to stop because if there's 1 in 3 to 4 girls and 1 in 4 boys being sexually abused under the age of 18 in some way, then how many abusers do we have? Well, 1 for every one of those 3 and 4 girls, and at least, or maybe not. Maybe there's, because they already proved that most of those people that have been caught and found guilty have confessed of multiple situations where they abused many children over a period of years, right? Now, whether that's true or not, some of them is proven because they'll actually, prove it by getting a hold of those children later in life. But, so many of them you just don't know if it's an accurate number or not. But, it doesn't matter. It shouldn't be happening. You know what I mean? And people say, well, they're mentally ill. It's like, well, then lock them up, and throw away the key. That's how I feel about it. Because why should another child have to suffer? Just because these are all somebody's relatives, these child sexual predators out here. Hope everybody realizes that. These are somebody's cousins, uncles, aunts, because women do sexually abuse children too, right? And these are all somebody's relatives somewhere. They're not all just loners somewhere, right? And, these people, it's like people would say, well, don't lock him up. He was just mentally ill. It's like, I don't care. I really don't, because how many children are going to have to suffer because we're going to just allow this to happen? It's just like, it's not right, because children have rights. Children have the right to life, like I said before. Like, I study child rights. I study all this stuff, right? So it's like, why are we not protecting children's rights? Why are we not standing up to protect the rights of the child? Just even in North America. I mean, there's lots of work being done around the world, even though nothing's really happening. But at least there is noise being made about it. But here in North America, it's like, well, you can pretty well stomp the crap out of your kid, kill them, break their legs and whatnot. And if nobody reports you, no problem, And it's just really sad, because most people won't report an abuser because they don't want to get involved, or they like that person. Like I said, who's going to cook the steaks if Uncle Bob goes to prison, right, or goes to jail? It's like, who cares? The child's life should come before steaks, but half the time it doesn't, because there's just so many dysfunctional, really twisted people out there who have these really bad ideas about how to raise children. I know. I grew up in this mess. And I could tell you all kinds of stuff that my parents did. Actually, I do talk about it all the time. But I haven't really gone into parenting style stuff, And, I've gone into detail about beatings and stuff and abuse. But just the parenting style, and even my sister's husband, like, he was the same type, abuser type, right? And so many people are. And they think it's fine to do that to children. And it's like, no, there's a better way. You know why? Because it's proven. There's been really good parents out there who have just used some great parenting techniques, you know what I mean? And they may not have had a whole lot of money. It has nothing to do with money. Some of these people are right under the poverty level or poverty level, but they raise healthy children, right? Because they're not twisted and demented themselves. You know what I mean? And so they love their children. Their children know that they're loved, and they may not be the richest people on the block, but they grow up healthy-minded people because they're not being abused, And then you have other people that just think it's fine to go ahead and just slap their kids around, call them names, spit on them, kick them around, make them feel like really, really bad for the rest of their lives, Or they seriously beat on them and burn them and hurt them, you know what I mean, and cause all kinds of physical damage. Or they sexually use them, and they think that's fine, right? So this is why it's so important to get involved, right? Because people just, so all of these abusers out here have friends. Most of them do. There might be, a percentage that are totally antisocial and just, you'd never see them. They keep to themselves, and that's why you don't see the children. Most of the time, that's not the case. People, that's why you have no idea who's abusing children, because they fit in with everybody else. They're shopping at the same grocery stores that we are. They're driving down the same streets we are in their cars. As a matter of fact, they live just a few doors down. That's the prevalence of child abuse. I'll tell you that. One of the latest statistics that I saw, which I can't remember where I actually saw it. It might have been on the National Clearinghouse for Domestic Violence and Child Abuse website. And they were saying that the average really is 1 in 3 to 4 girls and 1 to 6 or 7 boys will be abused in some way. So even though those are the stats for child sexual abuse as well, but they're even like saying now it's 1 in 4 boys. But the stats for physical abuse, verbal, emotional, psychological abuse, neglect, as far as they can tell, is about the same. 1 in 3 to 4 girls, 1 in like 6 boys, I should say. Well, that's too many, if you ask me. That means count the houses on your street, count out 6. One of those 6, there'll be abuse going on of some type, whether it's child sexual abuse, verbal, emotional, psychological abuse, or physical abuse, or some type of abuse. Guaranteed. That's the way it is, right? And this is why this has got to stop, and this is why nobody wants to hear about it. Because everybody knows about it. Everybody knows it's going on in some home near them, but they're not going to do anything about it. Oh, it's not my business. It's not my place. It is your place to save that child's life. It's all of our place to do the right thing and make the phone call. Because if you're wrong, then it really makes no difference. They're not going to remove the child, right? But if you're right, you could save that child's life from a life of torture and abuse, and you could get that child some help. You know what I mean? Even though the system still sucks, foster care stuff is not that great, but it's better than leaving the child there to possibly die. You know what I mean? So be very diligent, you know what I mean? And watch out for the kids in your life and make sure that they're not being abused and that they're not being mistreated, you know what I mean? And do something about it. And thanks everybody for being here. I really appreciate it. Like I've done over 800 shows, and I'll be, I don't know, next month be 2 years on here. So I appreciate everybody taking the time to listen. And I'll be back on this weekend with my show, as well as Monday morning, One Child Abuse Survivor to another back on Monday morning. So take good care of yourselves. If you need something, you can leave me a message here on Blog Talk Radio or catch me on Facebook or wherever. I'll be around. So we'll talk to you real soon. Have a good weekend, everybody, and take really good care. Bye-bye.